From Aotea Great Barrier Island, Aotearoa New Zealand, welcome to Small Island Big Ideas, an ongoing festival of conversations and events created to take Aotea Great Barrier Island and possibly the world forward. I'm Tim Higham.
And I'm Sandy Burgham, and together with our friend Bree Biederman, we are the Small Island Big Ideas team. It's 2024, and Small Island Big Ideas is going global. Thanks to input from many of those in our own community, we've scoured the globe to find other small islands, similar in size to our own, who've had a big idea that has led to some sort of radical reinvention.
We're interested in how other small islands are facing the future. How have they acted on a big idea that's transformed their island community in a positive way? We'll be sharing those conversations and learnings on this podcast over the next few months, one small island at a time. So let's get started.
The Hawaiian island of Maui has a population of around 150,000 people and a land area mass of around 1,800 square kilometres. For years, it has been known as a tropical paradise, but in 2023, devastating wildfires swept through the oceanside town of Lahaina, home to 12,000 people. The fires destroyed more than 2,000 structures, caused about $5 billion in damages, and more than 100 people lost their lives. This is a story of how a community is healing through restoring, remembering, and redefining legacy using Indigenous knowledge and frameworks and the healing power of trees. We are lucky to be speaking with Dwayne Sparkman, an expert in Hawaiian native trees. Dwayne is on the board of directors of the Maui Cultural Lands Group. He is chairman of the Maui County Arborist Committee and founder of a new not-for-profit called Tree Covery. So we are lucky to have with us today Dwayne Sparkman, who is an expert in native trees. And so, Dwayne, our understanding is that you are the chairman or the chairperson of the Maui County Arborist Committee and a founder of Tree Covery, which we'll tell us about a bit later on. So I'm Sandy, this is Jason.
Nice to meet you.
Both of us live on...
Nice to meet you too, Jason. Nice to meet you, Sandy. Thank you.
Yeah, and look, actually, before we start, I think we're going around the world and we're talking to different islands, and we're very excited to talk to Maui because about a month ago, I picked up a Time magazine at the airport on the way to the island, and I read about Maui cultural lands. And I called our researcher and I said, I know Maui seems like a big island and it's part of the States, but let's see if we can speak to somebody there. So we're so thrilled that you're here speaking to us. So maybe if we could initially start with, you tell us a bit about yourself, but also about the devastation after the fires or during the fires in Maui, and we'll start from there.
Yeah, so currently I hold a position at a resort. It's a 27-acre resort. It's called the Royal Lahaina Resort and Bungalows. I'm the chief engineer there, and so that's my full-time job as my career. And so, I was actually I wasn't affected by the fire. My home is on the other side of the island from Lahaina, but I was there that day and that night, and was stuck there over the next week, and had to work there and come back and forth over the next 2 to 3 weeks of chaos. And yeah, it's the most traumatic thing I've ever had to go through in my life, and I'm still very traumatized by it. And it's going to be a lot to get over. But we'll talk more about that in depth. But I'm also like you said, the chairman of the Arborist Committee for Maui County. So we oversee all the exceptional trees and historically important trees around Maui County, which also includes the island of Lanai and the island of Molokai. So we have a few islands we kind of oversee for trees. I sit on the board for Maui Cultural Lands. I'm one of the board of directors for that, and I'm also founder of Tree Covery. Tree Covery is a big part of my life now because we just founded it in 2023 November, just for the purpose of getting trees back to people. They need some way to heal, and we need some way to get people to heal. And one way to do that is to plant trees, and it works.
Right, I'm so excited that we're speaking to you, particularly because you're the one I read about in Time magazine. I can't actually believe we're talking with you. And not that we want you to relive the trauma, but I think for our listeners, it would be just to frame up what happened to start off with would be interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, that day, my daughter calls me at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and tells me that she's being evacuated from a home that she's actually house sitting from up in Kula because of fire. There's a fire, right across the street. It's coming down the hill toward the home. And she said, I got to get out. Where do I go? And she, I told her, grab the dog, grab whatever you can and go to your boyfriend's house and go there because we have dogs and we can't take more dogs. That would not be good. So she did that. And then, I went back to sleep. Then I get a call around 4:30 or so that my hotel, all of the power's out and, generators are working, but, to come in. So I get all my stuff together and start driving in and the wind that day, I've lived here for 30 years and I've never seen wind like that. Like the winds were way, way stronger than anything I've ever seen. And they were way faster than what we're seeing and being reported on the news. It was way, way, way more intense. And so, get into work really early and see there's a lot of, down branches, down trees and stuff. And there's already fire that had started, around 6 o'clock in the morning and they had got that extinguished at some point. And, had to deal with, one of our properties down on Front Street had some solar panels blow off and land on some cars. And so I had to go remove all that stuff and consider doing some insurance reports because it was all on top of the rental cars, right? So we have to go get rid of all that material. And we got all that stuff moved for those folks. And, by that time they're saying, there's a big fire in town, people should start evacuating. And so all the tourists were just kind of getting the word of, hey, get out now. If you got a plane flight, get your stuff and get out. We just don't know what's going to happen. You can get stuck on this side for how long. We just don't know. So people started kind of evacuating on their own. A lot of tourists leaving, a lot of tourists just staying. And as the night progressed, I was back at the resort and we kept getting, some of our workers calling us and saying, sorry, it's really hard because they had to go get their families. Yeah. And some of them, their families didn't make it. And they had to come back to the hotel and we had to take care of them after that. And it's really hard to still go through all this stuff because, I still work with these people on a daily basis and we're still very, very tight. We've developed a really tight community relationship because all of us, unfortunately saw the entire town burn down.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And it's something that we didn't think we'd ever go through in our lifetime, but historically it's happened, like Lahaina's burned before, right? It's historically a fact that area gets these ko'ula winds every once in a while historically, and the winds come through and they used to have the indigenous people had a warning system of a whistle that would go through a set of rocks that they made that would allow them to know that the winds were coming and to them evacuate that area because the fires would happen so fast they couldn't get out of the way, right? And then when the sugarcane came in, they knocked all that stuff down, and so those indigenous whistles, those indigenous sirens went away. So we no longer, what I mean? It's gone. So we don't have a way of knowing that until, you have modern technology saying that, now we have this hurricane that's, 450 miles south of us, and we have this big other pressure system north of us, and the wind's trying to fill one in, right? And Maui's right in the middle. And so we took the hit of 116 mile an hour winds without a single cloud in the sky, and you're sitting there going, I've never seen no clouds and the winds just blistering across the land and burning stuff at like blast furnace temperature. So people, unfortunately, I didn't see this, but I was told that it was like Pompeii, like people were like piles of ashes standing in place because the fire was so fast and so hot that they didn't even have a chance to move from holding the garden hose watering their yard.
Oh my
right.
God.
And so to think about that our community saw that, and our children saw that, right? And because they were evacuating with the families too, and they have these mental scars to deal with, right, from now on. But I guess what I'm seeing now is the transition of how we have stripped that chaos out, and now we have all this empty space to rebuild what's there. I mean, and to see how rapid the government actually stepped in and took all that material out. It was really impressive. We were very happy about how quickly they removed all the debris, right? It was a very quick, rapid response. It's a very, if even for, the United States government, they had never gone through a situation that was created by this fire because of the proximity of watershed to coral reef. Right. No other place in the United States has what we have in Lahaina. Our watershed is very, it's a critical watershed, and it can be contaminated quickly, and we don't want that. And these fires, we didn't expect that, but it happened, and whew, I mean, we talk the tree recovery, our tree cut down removal. They know that 21,000 trees were burned in that fire. 21,000 trees, and that's 1,400 homes and 250 commercial properties, right? And 21,000 trees, a little forest of fruit trees and historical important trees, all gone in a matter of, like, say, 13 hours, and it's just, and then for myself personally, having access to all of these areas the entire time, right? Most people that are born and raised here did not have access. The people that should have been able to see this to heal, you know what I mean? To see all what it actually looked like when it was burned, because to me, we had to, like, think it was kind of like a movie set, that you have to block all this out because you just don't know what you're looking in. Because there could still be people in there, and they still found people after, and we were working, and they were pulling and finding people when they were pulling the buildings up, so it was, I had experiences of bringing spirits to my home across the island, having to huvai in the water down here to let the spirits go, and immediate results. And the feelings I'm having by doing these indigenous actions, I would be able to let these spirits go, and it's important that we do that. We allow them to transition to the new side. And a lot of folks have seen that here. We lost a lot of people in an instant at that place. A lot of people were confused because it was so fast, didn't even know what was happening. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you, and thank you for sharing that. And I realize it's still so painful, and we'll get onto the healing journey in a moment. What you've just said is really moving in terms of a process, a spiritual process of release, using Indigenous practice. For you and your colleagues and friends in Maui, is that something you would normally do? Is that built into the practice of being an islander?
We are trying to push that as hard as we can, that it should be a standard. We are part of a group of people that want that to happen and make that a part of what we do intentionally. Even whenever we set out to do these trees, we actually do an oli to provide us an acceptance to be there, and for us to be guided by our ancestors to do the work we do, and utilize their knowledge for our future, right? And so we chant that in the beginning, and at that we even chant the trees into the ground by asking them to grow, So we want that to be a part of this, because we see the benefit to that, not only in having the personal connection to planting that tree, but we actually see that it helps the tree. Like, honestly, we see how these connections actually do make sense for everybody to be a part of the entire cycle, because we talk about Aina, and Aina is not just soil. It's not just the land. It's the entire cycle, and we're part of that cycle. And as soon as we become part of that cycle, things become so much easier, and you see things in a completely different light, and that's why kind of, starting this program of tree recovery is I've done enough of these volunteer groups and done enough of this voluntourism with the resorts, right? So I have the connection of the cultural side and the connection of all the tourism and resort side. I thought that, hey, what if we all just kind of like, if we all grew trees together, let's like, it wouldn't be that expensive. I think we would be able to pay for it for everybody, to be honest. I just kind of, but it's been an overwhelming, like, yeah, duh, let's do this. Like, we can have people come help and let us know about when we can do this, because we'll bring our, not only, like, you have no idea how many people we've had come down, like, as far as tourists come down, and general managers of the resorts are helping us plant trees, but we're not planting them in the ground. We're putting them in pots.
Yeah.
Because we know, if we got to replace 21,000 trees in a matter of 5 years, right? These 21,000 trees, as they rebuild the properties, they're not going to be of a good size. They're going to be small. So we're trying to get the small trees now, put them in bigger pots and grow them so they're of a good size when we plant them, so they already create shade, and we'll start creating fruit sooner than later. Yeah. I mean, the whole point. Yeah.
So, Jack, can I back up the bus a bit, Dwayne?
Yes.
Because that's a really interesting point in terms of the starting point for tree recovery. You'd already been involved in, you called it voluntourism.
Yes.
So before the fire, you were involved in a program, is that right, of Jason's involved in tourism on our island, but isn't it a lovely term, Jace? Volunteer.
I do. I think it's, and one of the questions in relation to that is, Dwayne, you were talking about tourists coming along. Are they tourists, or do you find that they're more like visitors and wanting to actually help the healing process?
Well, I mean, it's hard for us to distinguish the two, because it's always just a tourist. You know what I mean? So we're just like, cool, a tourist came and they were stoked. So for us, it changes our mind, because now they're no longer a tourist. After, they're part of the ohana. You know what I mean? We're probably friends on Facebook. They follow us on Instagram. I might even have their phone number. And the next time they come out here, they're going to ask us, hey, what should I do? And we're going to give them a better experience than they'll ever have, because now they have actually dug in and touched the soil, right? Literally with their hands, put their hands in the soil, and have become part of the Aina, the entire process, and met with, people like myself and the native, Hawaiian folks that have taught me. That's the cool part, is we become part of this bigger group, and for us, it's a way to, I love it in the fact that, me personally, I don't like to go places unless I'm invited, because the experience is so much better when somebody from there says, hey, come stay with me, because I'll show you around town. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you go there and you're like, what am I going to do here? I have no idea. I don't know anybody. Don't know where to go. I got to guess. Google. Yeah, cool. That's got all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know what that is. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I'd like to go where I fit in. But I mean, whatever. But my point is, when voluntourism, and we had to figure out some way of getting folks a Hawaiian experience instead. And we're sitting there going, okay, yeah, luau. And I asked people, how many people, and I've asked full-blood Hawaiians, I mean, you're at home, and how many times has just a luau just busted out? Like, people have shown up with fire knife dancers, and girls with little coconut bikinis and shit show up, and they start doing their thing. And they're like, never. I go, exactly. Like, so, like, why do we do luau's? Like, what is that? And it's just this show that was created just like entertainment. That's all it is. It's not even real.
Something to do to make them feel as if we have the same thing with sort of Maori concert parties at the museum in Auckland. It's almost like a tick box mentality. Seen Maori concert party, but back. So when you were so it was after the event, okay? You're still in the process and you will be for a very long time of healing. So was Maui in a situation where it needed tourists to come back to kickstart the economy? A little bit about that and how tree covery interwove into that would be very interesting for us.
Well, it was interesting because I mean, working at a resort, our particular resort, we made or not made, we asked all the tourists to leave, and we opened it 100% to any victim of the fire. We let every room go to Red Cross, and we had for a total of 7 months, we had nothing but folks that had lost everything. And so we had the entire community of Lahaina living on our property.
Wow.
So for us, it was, it kind of, as the employees, we were like, we kind of like this. This is nice because they're taking care of everything. Like they wouldn't break stuff. Like tourists, they treat our rooms like garbage. They break stuff all the time. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they break stuff in our rooms. These people took care of everything so well. They were so respectful and so nice. After they lost everything, they're forced to live in this little tiny shoebox without a kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Like, where are you going to eat? We were feeding everybody is whatever we could, and it was an incredible experience that I'm glad I went through. I was forced to go through it. I wouldn't choose to go through it, but I'm glad I did after the fact. You know what I mean? Because it makes you really appreciate your community so much, and you see so much love and aloha between the people and the humans right there. And you learn that we're there's so much more that's important. You know what I mean? Like for a while there, you guys, you got to understand, like we had no communication ways at all. Like none. Like we had, like Wi-Fi was super spotty. If we were lucky, we had the, what do you call those? The Starlink, but everybody was on them. So bandwidth was always full. Right. So we never had a repeater. So cell phones were almost out all the time, could barely text. Right. And so I was explaining this to folks that literally for the first like 2 weeks, we would have experiences that were so elating and so exciting that you were on top of Mount Everest and you felt so good because somebody found their family member and you're like, oh my God, and this is incredible. And then like 20 minutes later, like not even, like maybe even 10 seconds later, you're texting your wife to tell her how exciting it is, and it's telling you the text has failed.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, it's not going through. It's not going through. And then all of a sudden she texts back and you're like, oh, cool. It went through. And then you're like, wait, it was such a mind fuck. Like I couldn't understand like how incredibly diverse my mental space was at that point, like how up and down it was from happy to sad, you know what I mean? And then trying to figure out how to get back to a normal level of psyche without going to such extremes. So I'm still dealing with that, and it's going to be a long time. It's going to be a real long time healing through that stuff. Yeah. To the point where I don't even know why I went that way. But anyway, sorry.
Yes, you guys.
So what was the seed for the thought of tree recovery? Like, so you've gone through all of this. I'm really, really interested to understand what that moment was, and then how the rest of the community were able to get behind it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is really how it started. So as chairman of Arborist Committee, we are, as a committee, we oversee all the exceptional trees, and the Lahaina banyan tree was in the middle of all this fire. We didn't know what was going on. Matter of fact, we didn't understand how all this was run on a federal level. We're not privy to that information. This is the first time we've ever had a disaster of this sort. So, hey, it's all new to us. So we were trying to figure out who is going to go look at these trees. We need to find out if they're alive. If they are, can we water them? What can we do, right? We have like really historically important trees in that town. So we couldn't get a hold of anybody. And then all of a sudden we started seeing people from Oahu come over to look at the tree, but they were brought in by the state. Right. And so I didn't know who exactly it was, but then I found out that this person was a previous person, a previous arborist that worked on the tree, and he was known to be, of a certain caliber. And this is the first time I ever met Steve Nims. So at that point, I found, I was like, okay, cool, it's all good. But they said they're from Oahu, and they wanted to start shipping stuff over to Maui to begin this program of nurturing the tree. And so I was able to get a hold of Steve, got his phone number from one of our arborist friends, and I called him and I said, "Hey, Steve, check this out. So I'm chairman of Arborist Committee on Maui. We have everything here on island. I really want to prevent any invasive species from coming over. We do not need to ship anything in. We have all the professionals here. We get the program with all the guys here. Let's keep the money on Maui." And he said, "Dude, all yours. I don't need to be a part of this at all. I know that the banyan tree is going to be a big deal. You can be in front of the camera." Because I don't want to be on camera. I was like, "No, dude." I go, "I don't mind that. I really don't mind that, because we need to start taking care of this tree, but I want to make sure it's done with local hands." Yeah. And that was maybe about 3 or 4 days after the fire. I was on the phone with him. And so I think on day 7 was my first visit into the fire zone to see all the devastation and see the burned tree. And I went in with the county arborist. He brought me in because he sits on the committee with me. And so I went in with him, and we went and looked at the tree, and we talked with Steve. We talked with everybody about what the program was going to be. What exactly do we need to do? And we established kind of this is basically what needs to happen over the next year. You know what I mean? If we can get these things done, and if there's any way to raise funds to help pay these guys that are going to do this at a volunteer level, because they're going to lose a lot of money because they're going to be here for a while working on this tree. Let's see how we can do that. And so it was in my head at that point, at day 7, okay, we got to figure out how we can raise funds to take care of these trees. And then a person that I ran into, I actually just met him by chance through, maybe through Facebook. He does this thing called Regreen Lahaina, and he had snuck in and started watering trees, like guerrilla missions, going in and watering trees that he knew were going to survive because they didn't burn, but he knew all the infrastructure was gone. And he started sneaking in and watering stuff, and he almost got arrested for watering coconut trees. I mean, holy shit, right? So, yeah, right. But the best part is he actually got a police officer to go in and water a coconut tree for him. So, that we know that the locals care. You know what I mean? That I had mentioned, Hawaii, the Hawaiians are a sticks and stones culture, and the sticks are the trees. They're the medicines, they're the shade, the food, they're everything around us. They're a lot of the archaeoacoustics that we have. They're all the sounds, right? So they're important to us. So trees are really important. So that became this mission of, okay, I've got to figure out how to get in with these people. How do I figure out how to get? So, okay, I'm on the phone with urban forestry or urban forestry. Somebody's called, her name is Heather McMillan. I'm on the phone with her. Governor had called and said, talk to the committee person. That's me. And so I talked to Heather McMillan. I'm on the phone with her, and she's like, okay, dude, like you're doing this tree recovery Lahaina program, and you want to start raising money and maybe growing trees for people, you should just like make it all one big program, dude. Like call it like tree recovery or something. And I was like, that works for me, Heather. I was like, check the box, dude. I was like, cool. Like, and I was on the phone the next day, and we decided to incorporate into a small nonprofit. And so by April, we were already in, we had our IRS status as nonprofit. So yeah, we're full nonprofit. So it's really awesome. So, but I mean, to continue with how we got to where we need to be today is a lot of pressure on my side to make sure that the people that were in the know and in the process knew that we were there to care about the trees, right? Because there's a lot of people there that were just like, hey, what are we doing about the trees? But they had no way to get in. They had no way to establish themselves. And so me being me, and I don't really give a shit because I'm a skateboarder and you just get up and go. And so I just ended up going to these early morning meetings just because I had a little bit of extra time. It was before I started work, and it was in Lahaina town. I like this parish in Lahaina. I work in Lahaina. It's perfect for me. So I would roll into these little meetings. I'd be standing there with like all the people that were working on the water lines and trying to remove debris. And the Army Corps is there, and all Red Cross is there, and FEMA's there, and everybody's there. And they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm tree recovery. And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm taking care of the trees. They're like, oh, cool. I'm like, yeah, bro. They're like, okay, right on. And it was like, from then on, he's just like, okay, all right. So tree recovery, what you got to say? I mean, and I was there for like, it was every week I was there, just show up, just every week I was there in their faces like, oh, so how do I get passes? How do I get people in? How are we going to water? I got a guy that needs to water. I need a pass for a guy that needs to water. And they're like, talk to the cops. And the cops are like, just text us, bro. And I got on a text thread with 2 police officers, and I would just text them, hey, I'm coming in at this time. We're bringing in a water truck to do this. Here's the places we're going to hit. And it was on. And the cops are like, cool. And they would let us in, dude. Like, they knew how important it was to get the trees watered. So it was a really neat to see, what we call Babylon actually helping. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, dude, like, I got you. And so I'm on this text thread, tree recovery group. So it was cool to be down with the cops. The cops are awesome, helping us get in there to water trees now, And so we established that relationship, and from being in there, it just became a snowball of, meeting the mayor, seeing the mayor a lot, and they're like, and all of a sudden they just couldn't not see tree recovery. You know what I mean?
And so,
and then,
yeah. So then the idea of getting people around you from FEMA and all the other people asking you questions, how did you then go, well, let's get the broader community to be involved as opposed to you going to your weekly stand-ups with peeps? How did you get that happening?
So the really awesome part about that is I just happen to know a lot of people that are, I wouldn't say cream of the crop, but kind of like the more mover and shakers within this particular industry of whether it be conservation forestry or voluntourism replanting forestry or actually professional growers from nurseries. Like, I know all the owners of those particular businesses. I know them. So I just started getting on the phone. Hey, man, check this out. I'm doing this project. How can you help? And they're like, I love it. What do you need? And it just became a snowball. When people started seeing that it was what we call in Hawaii, we call it kokua. And kokua is to give without expecting anything in return. Because we don't. Like, we know there's a giant scar that needs to be replanted as soon as possible. And we know that there's not going to be enough of the right size and right flavor mango trees for these people when it comes time. And they will get in fistfights over Hayden mangoes when they ain't a big enough one, or there's only 2 left and 50 people want it. You know what I mean? And we don't want that to happen. And we got to the point to where we saw so much loss, and we saw so much, like, people are so busy trying to figure out and navigate insurance and rebuilding, and how am I going to raise the money now, because now my property's 3 times the value to rebuild. Dealing with that alone, and now they got to think trees, right? And then that's not even on their mind. Their mind is like, oh, I got to think about a landscape, and I got to get an architect to draw it, and this and that, and blah blah blah. But when it comes time to buy that tree, it's not going to be there, because there's going to be a mad rush of trees going in the ground at that particular time, because they're going to start doing houses relatively fast, and it's going to deplete the inventory. So we've got to look at how can we establish inventory for people, get their names on the trees. They own them. They're sitting somewhere. They're being taken care of. You call us when you're ready. You got 5 years.
Right.
And people just love the idea. Me being in the resort, chief engineer of the resort, I know a lot of the general managers across that whole area of our Kaanapali, which consists of like 15 different resorts. I'm in 6 right now, growing trees in lobbies, in greenhouses, in their courtyards. There are trees in pots with signs that says tree recovery, and the tourists are walking by going, what is this? Like, oh my God, no. And then they scan this QR and they donate money. So we're just, it's a way that we can engage and let people know that, no, our community, we take care of ourselves. Like, we will help ourselves. Like, we will work on doing it. You guys can donate to us, but we're going to do this project and we're going to make it happen. Like, we're going to figure out, because the partnerships that we have here are ridiculous. And if you've looked on the website, look on our art area. We are doing some really amazing stuff with some artists here, and there's way more to come. I mean, some really cool stuff with music and ukuleles and guitars. I mean, it's just, Yes, this stuff is going to get really big here in the next couple, maybe next year or so. It's going to get even bigger than we can even imagine. I still pinch myself and say, no way, you talked to who today? Wow. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, I mean, I get these calls that are just, I mean, even like for you guys to even reach out, we really appreciate it because we want to share a story of a community that will help itself heal. And
Yes.
if it's a story that can bring people to us, and if they want to come heal, come on over, come heal. I mean, we got a way you can help.
So, Dwayne, on that, I'll get onto the generosity of donors in a moment. And this is probably me processing, and I just want to get this off my chest. It's such a beautiful story of healing, interconnectedness, and community, and actually how nature, it's so interconnected. I love, I think you said the word something like Aina or something. There was a
Aina.
Aina, because it sounds to me very similar to a Maori concept of Maori, which is the universal vitality, the spirit that connects us all, that's just there. And and there's something beautiful. This is just me kind of expressing what's going on here. I'm so interested in the science and all the research that they're discovering about trees as living organisms and the way they are a community, they heal each other, they communicate, that it's all part of, and that, you know, the way you are conceptualizing and being here is allowing tourists, the community, to get to be part of that, to connect deeply with trees, because we're all connected anyway. There's something so moving about that.
Well, now guess what we got to do? We got to change how our federal government looks at recovery in situations like this, because we were sitting in meetings with those guys and they're telling us, oh no, this is what we do. And I go in and out of the burn zone, and I'm like, well, I'm just telling you right now, what you're doing isn't good enough. And you're asking me what I want. I'm sitting at the table and you're saying, what do you want? I said, well, this is what I want. I want you to do better than what you're doing now, because what you're doing now is what you would do like anywhere in a construction area. And he goes, yeah, that's exactly what we do. And I said, this isn't construction. This is industrial, like disaster, burn, fire with like heavy metals and toxins and poisons on the surface of the ground. And when it rains, and it will, like, you're telling me that these construction BMPs, that'll work. And he's like, well, will they work? I go, yeah, for construction. I go, this isn't construction. I go, I don't know what you're doing. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're asking us what we want. This is what we want you to do better. And we left that meeting, and that was the first meeting that I had with Army Corps and our little division of cultural natural resource with Maui County. And, you know, we left with like kind of not a good feeling. We were like, man, this is going to suck. We're going to be adversarial, and this is going to be a really bumpy road, you know. And then 2 weeks later, we're in a meeting with that guy's boss and everybody else. And it was really amazing. There's like 7 or 8 of us and like 50 of them. And they're all standing around us like, okay, what do you guys want? And I go, I want better than what that guy's offering, because he's behind me. And I'm like, that guy right there. I was like, nope, I don't want what he's offering. I said, I want better. I go, I think we all agree, right? And we all were like, yep, we want better when that guy's offering. And amazingly, they stepped up and they were like, all right, we're going to get you some bio socks. They started bringing in these bio socks that have biochar in them that will actually capture heavy metals and capture toxins. And then they started bumping up their BMPs and doing more. So we saw almost an immediate reaction to that, right? But it took literally an adversarial. I had to dig my heels in, because they were going to come in and just run roughshod and treat us like they would treat people anywhere else. And we're over Army Corps coming in and treating people like they treat everybody else. Like, they have done such bad stuff to us in the history of Hawaii. They were like, we don't believe you. Like, no way. Like, Army, if it has Army in it, we're like, nope. Like, we have a problem with Salvation Army because it has Army in it. Like, nope. Like, sorry, dude. You know, like, seriously, it's weird. So, like, for us, we're like, you know, like, it's kind of, so we had a real bad mistrust for a little bit, but we saw a turn, right? And now they have developed some sort of like green FEMA, No joke. Like they're now doing some sort of like now they're gonna look at indigenous people's input. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, you guys, like, hold on. You've had fires in like Arizona and like California, and I know there's indigenous people in New Mexico. Like I know this, and you didn't listen to any of them. It took this in Hawaii for you guys to like go, oh, yeah, maybe the indigenous people know something. Like
Well,
hello.
yeah, well, that's that is a terrific legacy to come out of a terrible situation. Wouldn't you agree, Sandy?
Oh, completely. And in terms of the big environmental project initiative on the island, which at our island, which is led by our local iwi, and which is our Indigenous people, our First Nations people on New Zealand, which is a real game changer. It's a huge game changer, and I think that point that it took this for actually maybe there's new knowledge, that maybe there is another way of looking at this, and it hooks right back to what you said at the start, Dwayne, and that Indigenous peoples used to have an alert system for fires. Jason originates from Australia, the bushfire capital of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know, California is similar.
But it's also interesting because on our island in 2013, we had a fire here as well. Nowhere near the damage, obviously, of the horrendous disaster that happened with yourself and your community. But that did bring the community together.
Yes.
And had to make sure that, it was only 116 hectares that were burnt, I believe, and it was down behind.
Just 160 hectares.
I know. But
that's
I know,
island, dude.
but I know that, so I think that, or maybe it was 16, but it wasn't anywhere near as horrific as what you had gone through. Yeah. And one of the interesting things about that is that when you talked about before about invasive species coming on and making sure that nothing came from other islands, that's something that I think is really important for, remote islands to make sure that when they do start to bring in new plants and things, that we're actually bringing it from within the actual island. And so when you spoke about when you came up with the idea of tree cover, and have you been able to now, with all of greenhouses and hotel lobbies starting to green everything up, have you got like a runway that you have to hit that you want to try to be able to get the 21,000 trees, and how does a visitor to the island, how have you inspired them to be part of it?
Well, so we are trying to hit 30,000 trees overall right now, because we still want to help the people in Kula. There's, I think, 40-something homes in Kula that were affected. So we're going to help them with the perimeter trees, or trees that they had planted during their lifetime or when they moved into that property. We're not replanting entire eucalyptus forests that they moved into, because there are actually grants from the federal government and state to cover all of that. So we're letting those people take those routes. And so we're going to help with that. But our aim is 30,000 trees. That's the big push. Right now, if collectively we have 4,000, only 4,000. So we're just over 10%. But it's going to take a little while. But at the same time, we don't really have the space to house 30,000 trees at this point, and we're looking for space to house, obviously the remaining, remaining balance. So we need, a couple acres, up to 20 acres or so of land and space to actually put in a greenhouse facility, educational space, and then have trees there that we can grow in perpetuity, to actually replant anytime there's a disaster, or if there's any type of issues. We can help supply trees for people, and we can be a donation space where if people are moving out of their home and they've got potted trees, they don't know what to do with them, come drop them off at Tree Recovery. We'll put them come get them for free, and people can come pick up free trees and take them home. Our whole point is to help supply trees for folks from now on, but also partner with as many existing groups that are here that need this type of connection, right? Because we deal with that. Like I've dealt with so many volunteerism groups, or so many like groups that are like, hey, what can we come do? How can we be a part of something? What can we do? And so it's like, okay, well then if we have a situation like this, you can always come over and pot up plants or plant trees or help us maintain the space or whatever. or we can have other volunteer groups come in, do grafting classes at our place for no charge. You know what I mean? Have a space that's free for people to come use. You know what I mean? And so it's an all-purpose space. So it's eventually that's kind of the dream, to have that, to get to that point with a few employees that are actually helping us out. Right now, we have no employees. We are 100% volunteer. I have a full-time job. All of our guys have full-time jobs right now. We're all working. So this is our second full-time job. Trust me, my wife knows I work so much, and she's been such a rock for me. So yeah, it's been very healing to be able to help and extend this help, because as Tree Recovery we were also the second opinion for folks. So as the federal government would come through and mark their trees, they would call Tree Recovery and say, "Can I get a second opinion on my tree?" And 99% of the time, the arborists were correct, because I know all of them and they're all trained properly. And it's like, I'd have to call them and let them down. But whenever I got to tell them, "Hey, we're going to give you free trees, fill out this survey, just fill it out, let us know what you want, we'll put you on the list," you get to see this, like, literally go from this dim to this light in their eye. And they're like, "What? No way. You're going to give me free trees?" Like, I'm like, yeah, whatever you want. Like, what do you want? And they're like, "Well, can I talk to my family about it?" Yeah, just, fill out the survey when you're ready. Take your time, and do I have to take them now? No, you got to 5 years. We'll grow them until you're ready. When your house is built, call us and we'll bring them to you, whatever. So our whole thing is to try to get to the point of being able to pay companies to come and install the trees. You know what I mean? Because right now we're buying trees full price. I'm buying from the local nurseries full price trees. I'm not. There's no donation. Some people are donating trees. Some people are like donating trees for me to just come clean their yard. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. But some people are legitimately donating beautiful rows of palm trees, beautiful foxtail palms, royal palms, coconuts. Come get them. But it costs money. Your cranes and backhoes and diggers to come move them. You know what I mean? So it costs money. And so that's where we want to keep all the money here on island. So that's where we're trying to pull money out of the ether and give it to people here to keep them working, keep the landscape industry moving forward. Yeah. And that's because, a lot of people lost so many contracts in town. So many landscape contracts were lost. So many tree trimming contracts were lost and will be gone for the next 15, 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah. It's going to be a long time till they trim a tree. Even when we plant them, it's going to be a long time till they call an arborist and be like, "Do I need to trim this?" No, it's not big enough. You know what I mean? It's like, keep going, dude. So yeah, so it's going to be a while before we even get that type of industry back in that space.
So it'll be interesting for us to just talk about, the spirit of generosity that is at the essence of Tree Recovery. When you're saying to people, "Sure, we'll supply your trees and it's free." We're understanding that spirit of generosity is also carrying on off island when there are off island donors wanting to contribute. And if you could talk to us a little bit about that, and if that's starting to snowball as well, if you're starting to see people making a financial contribution or just sending trees over, etc.
We are getting we have guys that have put in for the every month there's a draw on their account. So every month so and so donates, and so you're like, "Oh, cool, Simon donated again this month. Right on, thanks, bro." You know what I mean? And so I get these emails of who's donating, right? And so I think we've raised almost 25,000 or so just in people doing online small donations of between $5 and $500 on the internet. Yeah. And so that just comes through. And so that's cool seeing that. It's, seeing and they're from all over, and they have little things like, "This is for so-and-so, and please, let people know I did this," like, cool, and so we try to put as much out there as we can, but like I said, we're all very busy. But what's really cool is seeing these families, like one family, $100,000 check shows up in an envelope with 2 stamps. That was it. It was like, okay, I open the envelope and the check falls out. I'm like, whoa, $100,000 right there, and I was like, wow, that's it. And I get an email, "Hey, use this, try to help the people that did the banyan tree work." So I got to divide that up between all the arborists that had gone in there and spent money, and spent hours and hours. One of the guys is almost $125,000 in work, doing work just to the banyan tree alone, because that tree was over an acre in size, and half of it burned. So half an acre of material had to be cut down. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's a lot of fine tree trimming out of a bucket. You know what I mean? And then cutting down these humongous trunks. Yeah. And so it's taken a while to get all that down, and then chip all that material, get all that material piled so we can bring it back in. So
and Dwayne, just for the listeners, the banyan tree is the largest one in America from what I understand.
Yes, and that's kind of why we wanted to keep it alive. And so to that point, there's a couple interesting perspectives about that particular tree and the ulu tree. You guys are familiar with breadfruit, right? So breadfruit trees are one of the most coveted trees of Lahaina. Matter of fact, it was called Mala'ulu Olele, which meant the beautiful forest grove of ulu trees. And at one point, they said that only 10 feet of sunlight would penetrate that space at sunrise and again at sunset. That's all the sun that would reach in there, because there was that much closed canopy ulu in that space, right? And is well maintained, and they had plenty of food source, right? Plenty of food source. And so you have to imagine that over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, as sugarcane and whaling started coming through, they started cutting those trees down, and they started burning the root systems of those trees every single year for 3 to 4 years to make sure they would not come back, so that way the Hawaiians would lose their cultural food source. Okay, so now all of a sudden you take this beautiful Mala'ulu Olele and you turn it into what we call Lahaina, which means the unrelenting sun. So polar opposite terms for that exact space within a, say, 5 to 10 year period. So I mean, and now you go from this beautiful sharing culture that we have all the food these people needed. They'd come in on the ships and we'd feed them, and they'd leave, and they'd give us stuff and we'd feed them, and now we're slaves. Wait, what? What is this? You see what I mean? So now all of a sudden there's this, like, they end in, right? The guy who makes private property, the sheriff, he gets a tree planted in his honor. And that is the world famous banyan tree.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So you gotta understand, the indigenous people of this space are not a fan of this tree.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Tourists.
So tourists love it. Oh, it's a worldwide icon. And oh my God, we get all the support and all the media because it draws all the numbers, right? But nobody's talking about the ulu tree, and people are pissed off. Okay. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Like, not kidding. I've had a lot of comments about me not talking enough about the ulu tree, that I'm only talking about the banyan tree. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about both, but it's about what's edited. I go, they edited out all the stuff I talked about the ulu. They're trying to get receivership from people around the world. They're trying to bring tourists in, and the tourists don't know what breadfruit is. Honestly, they don't. They didn't carve their boyfriend's name in a breadfruit tree, but they did in the banyan tree in Lahaina town. Okay, so they want to come back and see that, right? So,
you'll be pleased to know. I'm sure we won't be editing out at all that section, right, Sandy?
I could really fall down a great rabbit hole talking about colonization, indigenous trees, interconnectedness. Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other podcast. But
totally. But so you got to see what our community is going through, right? So now
it's all come to the surface. Actually, all these conversations have obviously come to the surface, which is really a good thing.
It's kind of neat for me to sit there and go, cool, I kind of created this thing you can't say no to. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I know you're gonna want to help, and they're like, yeah. And in some way, people want to help in some way, and it's a good blessing for us to get that type of help from all over the world. You know what I mean? But like, our thing is to make sure that it's looked at as it's a community movement. It's a community guided effort. And we're looking at trying to rebuild this Mala'ulu Olele concept of a fruit forest. It's not going to be a Mala'ulu. It's going to be a mala of many different tropical fruit ulu. You know what I mean? That type of stuff. That's what it's going to be. And we also know that the federal government wants to help with that. So they're going to help us try to find funding for it. They haven't been very helpful, but they're trying. Whatever. I have a whole different thing with them. That could be a whole nother podcast. But it's really neat seeing that they're also looking at trying to restore what we call moku'ula. And moku'ula was a space where, like, imagine Venice, because they used to call it the Venice of the Pacific. Like that area of Moku'ula, which is right next to Mala'ulu Olele, was called the Venice of the Pacific. You could paddle, or you could sail a boat half a mile inland and go to a church. There was a dock on a church that burned. The church burned, but there used to be a dock on it. You could, like, all the way in to there. And I'm sitting there looking at the giant ulu tree that's like 300 or 400 years old, sitting right there, pushing up all these babies. And you're going, what's the water source? Like, I know exactly what the water source is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this thing is pulling from a water lens that's all throughout here. You know, and then when we started looking at trying to pull soil samples, and you got to pull dry soil samples, right? We couldn't find a single dry piece of soil in that whole area because it's coming from the ground up. You know, all of these bog species of plants are coming up out of the ground, and no rain. Like, it ain't no rain. I'm telling you, it's all coming from subsurface, and there's plenty of water down there. So they're looking at restoring that historically. The Smithsonian has come in to help guide some of the recovery of the material that they find once they start removing. How's this? The tennis courts, basketball courts, and the baseball fields, all that, because that's what they did with the place. And it was the king's seat. It was the actual capital of the entire Hawaiian Islands, the capital. Okay, and they took it and they filled it completely in and put baseball fields and tennis courts.
Dwayne, arguably, then this is snowballing, right? Obviously, which is exciting. We'll talk maybe at the end about people who are wanting to come, you know, the marathon runners, the college basketball team. I'm reading these notes here, who wanted to come and do something to contribute, this volunteerism, which is interesting. So arguably in about 30 or to 50 years' time, when you're a middle-aged man, right, arguably, well, the fruit forest concept, it will be healthier than it was possibly just before the fire. Because I don't want to use the pun of the phoenix from the ashes, the irony, the legacy outcome of this. Actually, it's an opportunity not just to rebuild, to restore, to make it better than before.
So many invasive trees burned. We were so happy. I mean, out of that 21,000, I don't know how many, because they know exactly. I could ask Dawson. They could probably tell me that maybe 25% was probably invasive. You know what I mean? Like, seriously. So that 25%, yay, good, gone off the face of the earth, was start over, silver lining, right? And so for us to be able to put back and plant smart, okay, you guys. So what we saw from this fire was things like rows of bananas would stop the fire. Like a big row of banana in the direction the fire's coming from, it would put the fire out. So we're going, okay, guys, if you need to put we know the wind prevails from this particular direction, plant that corner of your property thick with bananas, but keep it clean. Keep the dry rubbish out, but if embers get in it, it'll snuff it out. It's full of water. You know what I mean? And also start looking at, okay, now a tree is not to be planted and planted underneath a hole intensely. Let's keep that area clean. Let it keep shade so it doesn't build up leaf litter. Right? Then all of a sudden that temperature change and the moisture within that space stops embers from hitting a home.
Yes.
We saw that. Okay. We actually saw trees do that. The banyan tree itself stopped the fire from reaching a bathroom.
I had one thought.
Yeah.
You spoke about earlier on, Dwayne, you talked about that you could hear almost like a warning sign, a signal coming through from wind. You were talking then also about, establishing native tree species. Are you going to be able to build that fantastic natural whistling that is a warning?
I don't know, because I don't know if it's actually on people's maps. They have Olelo, like there's chants, there's Hawaiian chants that speak of it, right? But we don't know if it actually has a finger point that says this is what it is and this is what it looked like. There's no written there's no drawings, no nothing. There's just Olelo. There's these chants that they have that speak to this siren, right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so that's where we're like, man, we wish we could. It'd be neat. But they're actually taking it a step further in the sense that they're putting in weather stations at particular points along all of the power line system. So if they catch any type of wind or anything, they just shut the power line system down, just in case thing. So yeah, they're trying to recreate that. You know what I mean? But we are trying to get as much into the indigenous. We're trying to tie indigenous things into what's actually modern. It's a difficult tie-in, but we're working on it.
I think that's so inspiring. Hey, Dwayne, thank you so much for your time. I found this incredibly moving, inspiring, and we are talking to around 10 islands. That's what we're going for this particular series. But I feel so pleased that we have hit an island with a strong Indigenous story as well. This regeneration of Indigenous knowledge, and that you are embracing it, opening your heart to it. I find that incredibly moving and inspiring. And thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you for sharing your story, because we totally understand and we sense that it's still very much on the surface emotionally, and it will be for a long, long time. But what an inspiring story. We have a little gift for you, but we're going to be honest that we don't know when it's going to arrive because of and Jason, do you want to do the word from our sponsors? I've got the bottle here.
Hey,
No,
hey.
you do it much better.
I mean, you need a drink, Jason.
So yes, this is
Nice.
a bottle of Island gin that is
And a
created
t-shirt.
here off grid, and a t-shirt. Yes, so that'll be coming to you.
Oh,
Yeah.
you guys are awesome. You don't understand. I found gin maybe about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Oh my God, that's it. Like, yeah, we're huge fans. We love botanist gin. Oh my God, it's you know what I mean? Like,
You're going to love this one. You're going to love this one. And so this, at some point, it's going to take a while to get there because of, we won't bore you with the details, but just know it will get there.
It's on its way.
One day when you really need it, a parcel will arrive on your desk.
Yeah, you guys are the best.
Oh
That is
my
awesome.
gosh. Well, we hope we can keep in touch. Thank you
Yeah,
so
please do.
much. I really hope people listening to this will have tree covery on their radar. I feel like jumping on a plane and going to plant some trees. I plant a lot of native trees here on the island.
Awesome.
So thank you so much. Best of luck with tree covery. And we really hope, and I sense we will be speaking again at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, at any point, you guys let me know. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Love.
Thank you.
Right on, you guys.
See you
Aloha.
later. Okay. Bye.
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 Wow. What a story.
I know. And I loved the fact that, yes, we've had a fire here, nowhere near as huge as what they've had, but there's some really good learnings there, Sandy, don't you think?
Oh, so many learnings. And actually, while I think of it as a sidebar, I wanted to also do a shout out. I couldn't squeeze this in the conversation to our incredible volunteer fire brigade. Aren't we lucky that an island this size like that, we have an incredible fire brigade? I feel that gives us a sense of security and safety, and that those guys also jump on planes and go and help in places like
Absolutely.
Australia and Canada
Yep.
and California. Yep. I mean, it just makes me feel what an incredible community we've got. What really resonated to me, there's so much in that. First of all, the interconnectedness of the Indigenous story and knowledge, and that the embracing of Indigenous practices as well.
Yes.
That come out of this process and trauma. And of course, that really resonates for Aotea and New Zealand. I loved this. I tried to explain. I mean, I didn't think they did a particularly good job. But that what trees and what stands of trees represent, and that interconnectedness, and this idea that actually getting people planting trees connects them into that.
Yes, but and I really, when he was speaking also about how important the specific trees were to the indigenous population, I was then reflecting back on looking around our environment. And if we think about some of the really important trees that we've got and how we would cope with something like that. So, and because it's also so raw for him at the moment, the learnings that we saw tonight could really help us if we had to think about our preparedness for something like that. If it went through part of the top part of the island or something, like, what would we do? So I really found it inspiring.
Oh, so did I. There was so much. Also, the other thing, and it's, because now this is our 6th episode, and, we're starting to see some commonalities coming through. And one of them that also, they did it at Fogo Island as well, and Lord Howe, this idea of people off island, people who mightn't even have a connection to Aotea, their contribution, financial or otherwise, or their direct contribution into the well-being and legacy of the island story and the island well-being. I'm not sure if we really explore that enough on
It's interesting also because I was thinking about the sort of the volunteerism idea, because it's so raw. I think he's on that journey, and I can see how by getting the sports teams involved, all of a sudden there will possibly be a travel agency that comes on board, and you can buy tickets and doing it, and benefit the community like that. But I do think, Sandy, like, I wanted to ask those questions as well, but I just sense that maybe that would be, they're right in the middle of that journey.
That'll kind of emerge, right?
Yeah.
And the thing, just generally, what I just wanted to reiterate, and it does restore my faith in human beings and connection and etc., is literally about a month ago, I did pick up a Time magazine and read it on the way over the area here. And I thought, this will be interesting. And I actually thought to myself, such a long shot that we were actually going to speak to anybody. And I just sent the article to Emma, and next minute.
Bang.
And so there's something exciting about that. Hey, thanks for being the wingman on this.
Not a problem.
On again. What an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
So
yes, and lots for us to be able to take away and think about in our community.
Okay, see you later, Jace.
Bye.
Small Island Big Ideas wish to thank our sponsor, Island Gin, probably the world's most sustainable gin company, distilled with Manuka bush honey and bottled in recycled glass, right here off-grid on Aotea Great Barrier Island.
And thanks to our partner in crime, Bree Biederman, researcher Emma Ricketts, Aotea FM, Luke Nola and friends, and the local board of Aotea Great Barrier Island's Auckland Council, and the Festival of Adult Learning.
Is there anybody else we need to thank?
Oh, probably half the island, Sandy, but...
and Georgie, let's give a shout out
my
to
daughter Georgie. The crew at Aotea FM, Linda Rowe and Renee Freeland.
Oh, and everybody from the island who's given us the great ideas too.
Yeah, that's right. They keep coming, don't they?
Absolutely.